If you clicked on this video, you've probably been using Airtable AI and wondered how you might be able to get it to create a number of records from just one prompt. For example, you might have a bunch of receipts that you want to create a record for each line item on that receipt. Or in the example that I'll use today, you asked AI to find the top 10 movies for each of the past 10 years, and you want to get structured information about each movie, like the release date, how much they grossed, etc. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a prompt which outputs structured data that we can feed into an Airtable automation script to create those records. My name is Julian, and I build Airtable bases with clients every day, from small businesses all the way up to companies with thousands of employees. And if you would like some more personalized help on a project, I offer services for that, and you can find more about those in the video description below. All right, so hopping into Airtable, I'm going to show you the finished solution first, so you can see how it works, and then we'll go ahead and build it from the beginning. So I've got this Airtable base here with two tables. There's a table for each year, and then there's a table for all the movies that we want to create and track information about. And going back to the years, I have two fields here. One is the structured JSON output that we're going to get from the AI that's going to allow us to create the movies. And then these are all the movies linked to that specific year. So if I want to create a new year, I would just insert a record above. Let's say this is 2018. I'll go ahead and click Run Agent. It has now created that JSON, and it's going to automatically then create those movies. And if I go over here, I can see it already created these 2018 movies. And not only did it do that, but it also put in the release date and the synopsis for each one. So now I'm going to move over into this other Airtable base, which is a stripped down version of the one that we just looked at with just the basic foundations of what we need here. So we still have a table called movies and a table called years. And in the movies table, we have a field for the title, release date, and synopsis, but no records yet. And then in the years table, we just have the primary field is for the year. So pretty simple setup. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a link between the two tables because we want to link each movie to the year that it was released in. And so I will click link to another record and then click the movies table, create field, skip lookups, and now we've got a link to movies. And if I go back over here, I can now see the years, the reciprocal link of that link that we just created on the other table. So now, let's just say I did have a movie. So if I say Spider-Man here, and then go over here, I can see that I now have a record called Spider-Man. It's linked to 2020. And so we've established that relationship. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. Now our next step is to create the actual AI field that's going to generate the data that we want. So let's go ahead and create a new field. And this is going to be a long text field type. And then we'll click this little convert button at the bottom to convert it into a field agent. And a field agent is just a fancy name for saying that you're using an AI model. They just rebranded this. It does not really change how they work to my understanding at all, but it does, according to Airtable, more accurately describe what these things do because they are smart and they have some amount of agency. They like to call it a field agent. So I'm going to call this field movie JSON. And that's because our output is going to be in a JSON data format. And so JSON, if you're not familiar with it, kind of like a CSV format, is just a very simple format for structuring text, the kind of text that you might put into a table. And it's one of the most common forms of structuring text throughout the internet. And so it's a natural format for us to use here, especially because we are going to be using JavaScript within an Airtable automation, and it plays really well with that. So I also have the option of choosing a model here. And if I were to use this a lot, I might experiment with using some of the lower cost models. In this case, I'm not too worried about how many times I'm going to run this. So we'll keep it with the default, which is GPT 4.1. And now we're going to give it its instructions. And I have pre-written these instructions, so I'm going to paste them in. But I'm going to describe to you exactly why I wrote them the way I did. I'll also say that we need to enable internet search for this one. So this allows the AI to look on the web for this. Obviously, to find the top 10 grossing movies of each year, it's going to need to search the internet. So in our prompt, I'm going to say, find the top 10 highest grossing movies from this year. And then I'm putting in the name of this record. So that's the year here. To actually add that, since I pasted it, I'll just do this. So to actually add that, we would go ahead and click insert field here, and then we can click name. All right, generate a JSON object that includes movie name, which is a string meaning text, release date, and then we give it the date format that we wanted to put it in, and then the synopsis, which is also a string or text. And then I say output this format and don't include anything else, because sometimes ChatGPT might want to say, hey, here are the top 10 movies, and then it would put the JSON object. But because the output that we're going to take here, we're going to feed into a script that is like structured code that is not AI, and so not flexible like AI, we need this output to be very consistent, to look the same every time. And if you've been using AI, you'll probably know that you might ask the AI a question one day and get one answer. And then if you ask it the same question the next day, you might get a slightly different answer. And that's one of the beauties of AI, right? A lot of its strengths are based on that flexibility. But in this case, it could really mess us up. And so we do want to use that flexibility to allow it to pull all the information we want. But then we want to be very rigid in how we describe what the output we want is going to be. So I say output this format and don't include anything else. And then I actually give it the JSON format that I want with an example. This is an array called movies. And within that, I've put a couple movies. Spider-Man No Way Home with the release date and synopsis. And then a second movie here. Now, I gave it a couple other instructions. One is output the JSON value as raw text with no markdown formatting, no backticks or blocks. That's just something that it has done in the past for me, and so I found that this is useful. And then do not use underscores and numbers. So similarly, this is just one of those things that it likes to do sometimes, and we don't want it to do it here, so we put that in. So I'm going to go ahead and create the field now, and it's automatically going to run for these 6 records here. And while it does that, we're going to go ahead and set up our automation that's going to run off of the JSON. So if I go to automations here, I am going to start by adding a trigger for our automation. So our trigger is going to be when it gets that data from the internet. And so it will be when a record matches conditions. And then we can go ahead and look in the years table, the movie JSON field. And we want to say when that field is not empty. So when that field is not empty, we are going to run a script. And so when I create this scripting action, it gives me this window here where we can write our text. And the first thing we need to do is add the input. So we had that trigger. The triggering event was that the JSON was added. And so we need to then pull that into this script. So I'm going to add an input variable, and I'll call it movie JSON. And then the value is going to be from that trigger, the movie JSON, the value. And now I'm going to paste in a incredibly simple script. And I'm realizing this script is based on this input variable just being called JSON all lowercase. So we'll change that here to that. And this one-line script was provided by Airtable community member Martin Melinda. Thanks so much, Martin, for this. I've had various versions of the script that did this, but this one works super well and it's just so simple that it makes everything a lot easier. So we can just paste this in, and keep in mind that this is designed to take the exact format that we told the Airtable AI to output. So you might ask it for JSON, but if you don't give it that specific format, it might give the JSON in a slightly different format that could be hard for this to read. And using AI, using ChatGPT or something like that is often very useful for troubleshooting if you're having troubles with a script like this. But the nice thing about this tutorial that I'm giving you is you really don't need to do that, because you can just take this line here, which I'll provide in the video description below. And in the template, I'll provide a free template of this Airtable base that you can download from my website so that you can recreate this yourself without having to mess with it. And let's go ahead and test this. So we'll test it for 2024, and it looks like the AI did pull those lists now while we've been doing this. And I can see that the output, so the input was this JSON, and the output was very similar, but it's in a format that we can use in subsequent Airtable automation actions. So I'll click Finish Editing here, and then I'm going to create a repeating group action because we grabbed 10 movies, and so I want to create one record for each of those 10 movies. So for a repeating group, we can select the input list, which is going to be this new array of movies from the script that we created. And then I'll go ahead and create a record within that repeating group in the movies table. And the fields we want to fill out are the title, the release date, and the synopsis. And so for the title, we will grab the current item, meaning the current of those 10 movies within our repeating group, movie name, release date, we'll make release date, and then synopsis, the synopsis. And then let's call this automation generate movies. Turn it on. And then going back to the data, we can see here that it created the JSON, but I'm actually going to clear it all out since that's the trigger. And let's test it. So for this first one, 2020, I'm going to go ahead and run. Agent is searching the web. All right, and it created the JSON, and then we should automatically get some movies created here. Oh, and actually, I think I forgot to link the movies. So if I go over here, it did create the movies, but I didn't have it link. So I'm going to go back into the automations, and then for when it creates the record, we want to do one more thing, which is that we're going to link it to the year, and the year is going to be from the trigger when the record matches conditions, because that's within that year when you have the JSON for that year. So we'll choose that record ID, update. And if I go back here now, clear this out and redo it, and let's do it for a couple of these. There it goes. If I go over here, I can see it creating all the movies, including their release date and their synopsis. Voila. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that you might do this for receipts. And so if you heard that and that was resonating with you and what you want to do, you might be wondering, can Airtable look at attachment fields and use that to create the JSON? And the answer to that is yes, but with some caveats. So if I were to create a new attachment field here, actually, I'm going to go to the years table and do it. So if I created a new attachment field here, then I can reference that in this prompt, right? So instead of saying, find the top 10 grossing movies from this year and then doing this, I can say, find all the line items from this receipt and then reference this receipt. In that case, you would not need an internet search, so you could turn that off, and you would just be referencing that receipt. Airtable does have the ability to read PDFs as long as they are digitized PDFs, and they are expanding to other file formats too. So it's worth checking and seeing what the current status is if there's a certain file type that you would like to use here. But I also will just caution you by saying that it doesn't always do exactly what you want it to do. So if you have a table within a PDF and you want it to read that table, I have been successful being able to do that before, and I also have had it miss things. And so this is a rapidly evolving technology. By the time you use it, it may work perfectly, but it is definitely worth testing and making sure that it works for your use case before you get too excited about it. Congratulations, you made it to the end, which means that you know how to generate any number of items from one AI prompt. Now that you have that figured out, have you used all of Airtable's AI features? I created this video that goes through each one to show which ones are useful and which ones you can probably skip for now.